Okay, I think I'm going to make a start. I am recording this talk, so good afternoon and welcome to the first in what I hope is going to be a series of talks this semester. This talk is all about exploring careers in forensic psychology and criminal justice. And I think one of the things I've decided to do with this talk is try and give you an insight into the different sectors that are within this type of employment. So what I'm going to do is show you a series of slides that link to websites where I think you can find a lot of information about this sector and the types of jobs that are available. One of the things that I often find is when I meet students, they say, I'm looking for opportunities in psychology, but I can't necessarily find them on the common job platforms. So I can't find them on Indeed or LinkedIn. And that's true. I think that you've got to go a little bit deeper. And that's what I'm hopefully going to do this afternoon to show you some of the more specialist places where vacancies are advertised, but also where you can start to find out a little bit about those job sectors and how employers recruit in those sectors, because that's an important thing that you can start thinking about now. Okay. So one of the places that I think is good to start off with is the BPS careers section on the BPS website, and it gives a really good overview of the different careers in psychology, and it gives you a really good understanding, I think, of the qualifications and some of the new emerging professions within psychology. So, for example, some of the newer roles like clinical associate, it's got information on that website about those kinds of things. So, one of the first places I would suggest that you start is the BPS website. It's a good overview of the qualifications and the ways forward. But as I said, this afternoon, I want to focus particularly on where you can find out information about forensic psychology careers and careers associated with criminal justice. Now, I think a really good place to start with that is looking at the job profile for forensic psychology on the Prospects website. Prospects is a website created by the different university career services in the UK. So the information that it has is up to date and fairly accurate. On what this job profile does is it gives you a really good understanding, I think, of the key responsibilities at work of a forensic psychologist. And I think by reading it, you'll get a good idea of the sort of day-to-day work that they're involved in. It also gives you an idea of the kind of places that they work in and the kinds of clients that they're working with. So I think that's useful to get a good understanding of that. Forensic psychologists don't just work in prisons; they do work in other places as well, particularly within the NHS. So having a look at this will give you an understanding of where and how they work. It also gives a good overview of the routes to qualification. How do you actually become a forensic psychologist? So it goes through the basic qualification route, which is having an undergraduate degree recognised by the BPS, so a first degree, and then doing a master's, an accredited master's in forensic psychology. And then the third part of that qualification process is to do what's called stage 2 supervised practice. what that effectively means is that you're working either in a prison or a hospital setting, and you're supervised as a trainee forensic psychologist. And it's that practice that then gives you the qualification. So you've got an undergraduate degree, the master's degree, and then you've got the work experience that's supervised, and that's what qualifies you as a forensic psychologist. Some people do go on to do a doctorate, but that's not necessary in order to be a forensic psychologist. The master's is sufficient. What it also talks about on this job profile is it outlines the skills that you need to develop in order to move into this area. So that's definitely worth a look. It also talks about work experience. What kind of work experience would help you get into this sector? And that's one of the things I want to raise later on in the presentation about the value of work experience, and getting work experience with ex-offenders is something that I think you can be looking at alongside your studies to try and build up the experience that employers are looking for. And it also has a lot of specialist websites where jobs would be advertised. So again, this is a good place to start the process. Okay. Right. So one of the specialist websites that's mentioned on prospects is actually HM Prisons and Probation Service website. So this is a website that's there for a couple of reasons. It actually advertises live vacancies, so you can use it to actually search for current vacancies throughout the country. And as you can see, there's I've just done a screenshot of the website. So it's a searchable website, so you can put in the kinds of roles that you're looking for and where you want to apply for them, and it will come up with a list of those kinds of vacancies. Generally speaking, the civil service, which HM is, and also the NHS, the kind of selection process that they have is often called a competency-based approach. So what that means is when they have a vacancy, they tend to have a job description which will have clear information about the kinds of skills, abilities, and experience that they're looking for. And it's your job as a candidate to write on the application form examples to show how you meet those criteria that they're asking for. Okay. So when I was looking to do the research for this this presentation, I did go on a number of different websites and find some jobs. So one of the jobs that I found was a trainee forensic psychologist working in the NHS, because I wanted something slightly different. And what's interesting about the trainee forensic psychologist in the NHS is that the job description does ask for a number of different things additional to what you perhaps would automatically think of. So one of the things it's asking for is the ability to communicate complex and highly sensitive information effectively to a wide range of people. It's also asking for experience of working in a team. It's also asking for knowledge of psychometric tests. And then when I looked for jobs in the prison service, I did actually find a national campaign where they actually recruited for a number of different trainee forensic psychologists in the prison service. The application process did involve the first stage was a situational judgment test. So if you've not done something like a situational judgment test, you can go on Career Edge, which is our website at UCLan, and you can actually look at some examples of what a situational judgment test is like. And I'd certainly advise you to get familiar with that if you're looking to go into these sectors, because often they're starting to use psychometric tests as part of the recruitment. So, for example, the police, which I'm not really going to talk about this afternoon, also uses situational judgment tests early in the selection process. So getting familiar, getting comfortable with these kinds of tests really helps you in the selection process. Okay, moving on. I've talked a lot about what I would call the governmental parts of criminal justice. So that's things like the police, the prison service, and the hospital service, if you like. They're governmental bodies. But it's true in the UK that a lot of support to offenders and ex-offenders is actually delivered by charity organisations or not-for-profit organisations. And one of those nationally is an organisation called NACRO. So NACRO is a charity that has both volunteers but also a lot of paid roles working in a variety of different parts of the criminal justice system. So NACRO workers do work inside prison and support people leaving prison, but they also work a lot in the community, particularly around key issues that affect ex-offenders. So things like housing, education, employment, these kinds of issues are the sort of projects that NACRO gets heavily involved in and actually employs people to do. So I've met quite a lot of people over the years that have actually started their forensic psychology career journey with an organisation like NACRO or some of the other national organisations and got experience working in the community with ex-offenders and then has moved into the prison service later on in their career. But I've also met it the other way around, where people have worked in the prison service and then moved towards organisations like NACRO. Okay, so NACRO are a national organisation, and there are a number of other national organisations like NACRO, but also dotted around the country, there are a whole series of much smaller charities and not-for-profits who deliver work to ex-offenders or their families. So, for example, there's a small charity in Prestwich near Manchester called POPS, that stands for Partners of Prisoners. And they're one of these organisations that's much more specialist. What they do is they deal with the children and families of prisoners. And I've met people who are interested in that kind of work, and they've gone into a more specialist direction, even within the criminal justice system. So, there are those kinds of very specialists, local charities as well. They will tend to recruit by application form, but occasionally it will be via CV. But quite often they do advertise vacancies on their own website. So both NACRO and POPS do advertise their vacancies, both for volunteering, but also for paid roles on their website. So getting familiar with these kinds of places is useful. As I said earlier on, for a lot of the jobs in the criminal justice system, the approach that an employer tends to take is, as I said, what's called a competency-based approach, which means that they're looking for examples to show that you meet the criteria that they're putting in the job advert. So it's really important that, as well as having the academic qualifications that you need for whatever it is you want to do in the forensic or criminal justice sector, it's important that you've perhaps spent some time building up a range of different experience with the client groups that you want to work with. So if you are interested in, criminal justice sector, one of the ways that you can start that journey is by getting some relevant volunteering experience. And as I said, with some charities that you get involved with, uh, volunteering can lead to paid work, but it also has value in its own right. So quite often you will see on job specifications, um, you know, uh, experience required, paid or unpaid. So employers recognize that it's not always easy to get experience directly in a prison because of things like security and stuff like that. So it takes a bit of time to get into a prison. So a lot of employers would say, try and get some experience with offenders, ex-offenders in the community. And that's why I've put up this particular slide. This slide is to promote CVCL. And CVCL is the volunteer arm within UCLAN. So different charities and organisations contact UCLAN, and CVCL help students get into those opportunities. So if you are interested in working in the criminal justice sector or forensic psychology, then getting some experience via a voluntary organisation can really help when it comes to filling out those application forms in the future. So CVCL are based in the student centre, and they do some face-to-face sessions in there. So certainly coming up and having a chat to the CVCL staff would really help you get an overview of what the opportunities could be in Lancashire. Now I'll move on to talk a little bit about Handshake, which is the other system that we have at UCLAN. So Career Edge we use for information about, it's a sort of careers library with a lot of written information and tools to help you create a CV. But Handshake is where we would have our placements, part-time jobs, and our fairs. So I'm just going to move on to show you a little bit about Handshake. Okay, so that's an overview of Handshake. On this slide, it talks about how you can actually download the app so that you can, you can interact with Handshake in whatever way is most beneficial for you. Okay, I just want to finish off by talking a little bit about the different options that I think people from this sector can go into. I've mentioned that a lot of people I see from forensic psychology do tend to want to go on to the masters. But I did see a student last year who was thinking about moving from forensic psychology to do a doctorate in childhood sexual exploitation. And unfortunately, that PhD wasn't happening. So we had a careers interview and we talked a bit about the kind of work that she wanted to do. And she wanted to do face-to-face work with children and families. So we talked a little bit about who else might deliver this kind of work. And it emerged that one of the areas that she could look at was social work. So what she did do was she went and had an interview with somebody that teaches on the masters in social work, and she used her forensic psychology degree to move in a slightly different direction, but to still work in the sector that she is interested in. Okay, so I just want to check if anybody's got any questions. I have been recording this session, so what I'll actually do is stop the recording so that if people either want to come on the microphone or put the question in the chat, I'll answer it. So just bear with me while I stop the recording.